Well, thank you very much for taking the time to attend this session. My name is Anand Iyer from VMware's product marketing team based out of Palo Alto, California. And my partner in crime today is Dan Borenstein. I will let Dan introduce himself.
Thanks. Yep, so I'm Daniel Borenstein. I'm an architect in VMware's cloud practice. I work out of Australia, and I help partners like yourselves bring new services and offerings to market.
Awesome. I think it's going to be a great combo, right? Palo Alto, Australia, product marketing, a technologist. So we have a wealth of information that we would like to share with you today. So without further ado, let us get started. A standard disclaimer. Well, this is just to notify you that part of the presentation is being presented by a product marketeer, so take it with a pinch of salt. Well, that was a joke. So all of us are on NDA here, so a standard disclaimer. Some of the information or, some of the things that we talk about in today's presentation may be forward-looking. So a standard disclaimer. Here is the agenda for today's presentation, today's session. As I mentioned, Dan and I will be co-presenting this session. Dan will be focused on the technical aspect of things, and I'll be focusing on, guesses, product marketing. So how many of you here are VCPP partners, VMware Cloud Provider Program partners? Excellent. Enterprise customers? How about the rest? Just curious to know. Okay. So just to give you some color about what VCPP is, as you all know, VCPP stands for VMware Cloud Provider Program, and we have about 4,500 customers, partners globally, that basically offer innovative managed cloud services built on top of the VMware stack, which we fondly call as the cloud provider platform. Cloud provider platform. So it comprises of compute, network, and storage. Not only that, a beautiful management layer on top of this SDDC stack. And as you all know, the future is going to be a multi-cloud environment. More and more enterprise customers are going to adopt multi-cloud as part of their strategy. And VMware is committed, and it is basically investing in the cloud provider platform so that we could simplify your journey, your customer's journey to this multi-cloud. So we have three important initiatives from my business unit's perspective, three important initiatives around the cloud provider platform. The first initiative is to modernize the VMware cloud so that you could offer your tenants, your customers, innovative products, innovative services rather. The second initiative that we are focused on is for us, so that you could expand your portfolio of services that you could offer your tenants using asset-light model. You don't have to invest in CapEx heavy infrastructure. You could make use of the services that we have built for you, and that is what I mean by an asset-light model. And the third initiative that we are focused on is to basically integrate the VMware Cloud services, integrate VMware Cloud services along with your service offerings that you could then package and offer them as a service to your customers. So three important initiatives that we are currently focused on. And this is basically to make sure that we simplify your journey to the public or to the multi-cloud environment. Okay? So we talked about what VCPP is. Any questions? Good. So now let's take a look at what is happening in the market, what the market trends are. There is rampant, digital disruption that is happening, as you all know, right? I mean, just to give you an example, a couple of days ago, I was here at the session, And I left the session around 7 p.m. I went outside, and I pulled up my smartphone, and I fired up my Uber app, right? Within 10 minutes, my car rolled over, I got in, I went to my hotel. I was exhausted because I had a long day, right? And I was contemplating whether to go out and have my dinner. I decided not to. What did I do? I picked up my smartphone. I fired up Uber Eats. Within 20 minutes, food was delivered at my doorsteps. That is the power of transformation that is happening in the industry today. And enterprises are basically making changes to how they approach the transition to take advantage of the digital transformation that is happening. Let me give you another example. When I came to this country 20 years ago, one of my favorite pastimes was to watch movies. I used to go to Blockbuster, pick up a couple of movies to watch over the weekend. What happened to them? They filed for bankruptcy. They are not in business anymore. Why is that? Because they couldn't adapt to the changes that are happening in the marketplace, right? Point being, digital disruption is happening everywhere, and enterprises are embarking on this journey. And one of the key things in order to meet the demands for enterprise, what they are doing is they are embracing this journey toward a multi-cloud world. Just to give you one more data point here from IDC, as you can see here, cloud is a great place to be, and the cloud spend is going to outpace enterprise IT spend sometime next year, right? And as I pointed out, the future is certainly going to be multi-cloud. And we did conduct a survey within VMware. And based on the survey, what we found out was 2/3 of our enterprise customers are embracing this journey toward a multi-cloud environment in various form factors, right? It could be a private cloud, dedicated private cloud, on-premise private cloud, hybrid cloud, a public cloud, or a combination of all these clouds. Plenty of opportunities for VCPP partners here, right? Because everything is moving to the cloud. More and more workloads are moving to the cloud. Plenty of opportunities. Opportunities also bring challenges, complexities, right? Imagine a situation where you have a single data center, and you have your mission-critical applications running in your data center, and you don't have proper operations management, products or solutions to monitor the environment. Imagine the amount of complexity that is involved there, right? You couldn't figure out capacity utilization. You couldn't figure out proactively if your applications are going to run into performance issues, so on and so forth. You will not be able to find out if there are health risks in your environment. Now imagine a hypothetical situation where more and more enterprises are embracing this journey to a multi-cloud environment. It's going to span, all the workloads are going to span across multiple clouds. And what if you don't have a good operations management solution in place? Right? It's going to be chaotic. So that is going to be the focus of our discussion today. So we'll be talking about how to solve this problem, the challenges posed by cloud silos, if you will. So again, just to point out, like in a multi-cloud world, more and more customers are going to ask you about, how my global environment is going to do. How can I proactively find out if there are any capacity issues in my environment? Again, I want to proactively find out if there are any, performance issues. What is the overall health of my infrastructure, of my data center? So these are all the questions that your tenants are going to ask you, and you should be ready to solve these problems. You should be able to address these problems, right? So that is where, so if you ask me what the solution is in order to basically address these challenges, the answer is going to be simple, right? For me, because I know what the answer is. The answer is VMware's vRealize operations. Anybody here that has already deployed vRealize operations? Perfect, perfect. So what is VMware's vRealize operations? Well, in simple terms, it is a software solution that provides operations management across multiple form factors, private cloud, hybrid cloud, or even public clouds, or a composition or a combination of all these clouds, right? So what are the opportunities? So we know, we realize operations is a perfect solution in terms of providing operations management across multiple clouds. So the question now is, how can cloud providers such as yourself make use of this opportunity? How can they monetize VROps as a service and make money out of it? And how can enterprise customers basically consume services based on VROps? So that is what we are going to discuss in the next maybe 30 to 40 minutes. So as we figured out, there are 4 different ways that VROps could be offered as a service. 4 different ways that VROps could be offered as a service to your tenants. The first option is to offer VROps as a single instance offering, to your tenants in a multi-tenant environment, The second option is to offer VROps as a service, as a single instance service to each of your tenants in their dedicated private cloud environments, right? The third option is to, as I mentioned, VROps could span multi-cloud. You could offer VROps as a service that spans across multiple clouds. VROps could also be offered as a service, or the features of VROps could also be offered as a service to your tenants. The assumption here is that your tenants will not have full access to VROps. You are going to manage the environment, and you are going to provide services to your tenants. The fourth option is you could augment your application practice. How many of you here have application specializations? Maybe SAP HANA as a service or a database as a service. Perfect. So VROps could be integrated into those environments as well for monitoring purposes, for visibility purposes. And you could offer that as a service to your tenants. That is the beauty of VROps. So we talked about these 4 options, and we will double-click on each of these options. For that, I invite my friend here, Dan, to walk us through. Dan?
Thanks, Anand. So Anand spoke about a number of ways in which you can offer vRealize operations-based services to your customers. I'm going to talk about a couple of those. I'm going to talk about how you can offer that in a multi-tenant capacity, backed by Vcloud Director, and then look at offering it to your private cloud customers as well. So for everyone in the audience, in the partner community, so how many of you are offering Vcloud Director-based services to your customers? Okay, so a few of you. And how many of you are also, of those who put their hand up, are also offering vRealize operations to your customers? Okay. So basically, a little while ago, we released a new management pack for Vcloud Director that comes with a tenant app component. And through this, we're able to provide tenant access to vRealize operations, metrics, dashboards, and some basic reporting, as well as a few other features. And so in order to provide this to our customers, in your vRealize operations install, you'll need to deploy just the management pack that was released a short while ago, and a small virtual appliance, which we call the tenant app. And this is what provides the view into vRealize operations for your tenants. So there's some intercommunication that occurs between Vcloud Director, the tenant app, vRealize operations, and then that uses AMQP broker at the back. So that might be RabbitMQ, for instance. So when you provide this to your customers, what do they see? So typically, your customers will have their own org VDC within Vcloud Director, and you'll get some basic dashboard metrics on the front page from which you can see how that org VDC is being consumed. So all of the usual factors such as CPU, storage, networking, and then some basic alerting to draw your attention to on the front page. But then what you're able to do, much as you can do in the native vRealize operations interface, is you can drill down into each of your vApps and your VMs and see the metrics and data points that surround those, as well as defining alerts and seeing reports related to your workloads, and see what's actually happening, see how those workloads are running in the environment, as well as utilization metrics and such. So that's what you see when you log in as a tenant. If you log in as a cloud provider administrator, you can see everything that your tenants can see, but a lot more. You get to see the entire view across all of your tenants, including all of the provider level vCloud Director-based constructs, such as provider VDCs, organizations, and then even drilling down into the vSphere resource pools that back those VDCs. So you can get a lot of information here. Now, you might be thinking, well, I can already log into the native vRealize operations interface myself because I'm an admin. So yes, you can definitely do that, and yes, you can get a whole lot more detail at that level. But when you log into the native vRealize operations interface, you're seeing very much a vSphere-centric view from the world down. So you'll see all of your vCenters, your resource pools, the workloads running under that, all of your vSphere hosts and such. So very good for getting a lot of detail. And then, of course, you've got the vCloud Director Management Pack, which will provide you a lot of information. But by viewing tenant information through the tenant app, you get a very good tenant context. So if you want to see what customer A, B, or C is doing, you can select their VDCs and see all of their workloads and get details around how those workloads are running in a tenant-centric context. So one of the features that's coming in the next release of vRealize Operations, which Pat mentioned during one of the keynotes, is chargeback functionality and cost analysis is being included inside of vRealize Operations. So in tandem with that, we're releasing an updated management pack for vCloud Director, through which we'll provide chargeback information again in a tenant context for cloud service providers and their customers. Now, as cloud service providers, particularly if you're running vCloud Director, you've probably been using vCenter Chargeback Manager for some time. And that may have been your primary tool of gathering utilization metrics and allocation data in order to bill your customers. Now, also, as you're probably aware, Chargeback Manager hasn't been actively developed in some time. It's just been in a bit of a maintenance mode. And while vCloud Director has taken leaps and bounds, we've got all sorts of great new features in vCloud Director now, but no way to actually charge for them, or no way for you to charge your customers for them. So with the new management pack that will be released later this half, what you'll be able to do is, much as you did in vCenter Chargeback Manager, you'll be able to define cost models and rate cards and apply those to your customer org VDCs in order to generate billing information and such. And you'll be also able to extract utilization and allocation-based metrics and information that you can, via API, that you'll then be able to feed into your enterprise billing systems. And the unique thing about this is, for the first time, it wasn't possible in Chargeback Manager, is that you'll be able to give your tenants, if you choose to, be able to give your tenants access to this information as well. So they'll be able to see, if you allocate a rate card against their org VDC, you'll be able to see, or that your tenants will be able to see exactly what they're consuming and how much it's costing them. So in order to offer a multi-tenant vCloud Director-based solution with vRealize Operations, where your tenants can see these metrics and information for themselves. Today, basically what's required is vRealize Operations 661, 4.5 for the management pack, and vCloud Director 5.5 and above. And 5.5 is end of life, but we can still pull the metrics from that. So switching gears from talking about vRealize operations in a multi-tenant capacity, I'm going to talk about it in a private cloud context now. So if you are offering a private hosted cloud solution to your customers, or perhaps you're managing their own data centers on premises, you can use, or you can provide those customers with vRealize operations in order to manage and monitor those environments. So you can give your customers a single pane of glass from which they can monitor their on-premises vSphere environments. They can monitor their private clouds that might be residing in your data centers. They can manage and monitor VMware Cloud and AWS, native AWS, and other hyperscalers. So it basically becomes a single point of management from which your customers can see all of their cloud resources, and really resonating with the multi-cloud story. So I guess double-clicking into a couple of things that, I guess selling points that you'd be able to offer to your customers, or if you're an enterprise customer, things that you can get from your cloud service providers. So one of those things is compliance. So we've got a management pack for vRealize operations, whereby if you offer this to your customers in a private cloud context, they'll have access to the native vRealize operations interface, and they can take advantage of things like the compliance management pack. So if you have customers that have compliance requirements, maybe PCI, HIPAA, DISA, ISO 27001, or maybe something that's country specific, or even just the vSphere hardening guide. So you can evaluate those environments against those standards, and vRealize operations will call out any violations against those compliance standards. So for instance, I did some work a little while back with a partner on offering a PCI compliant environment for their customer, and one of those requirements, I think it's 10, I probably know far too much about PCI, but requirement 10 requires that a syslog solution is used, and that those logs are maintained for a certain period of time. So using the compliance pack, we can use that to check that our ESXi hosts in the environment are configured to send their syslogs to a syslog server. And if they're not, then that will be a red flag and you'll receive an alert. So other things such as the bread and butter of vRealize operations, so for those of you that are already using it today to monitor your environments operationally, so we can take a VM that we might have received an alert for, and drill down into exactly what might be causing issues for that VM. So if we click our VM, we can see, and maybe if we're using vRealize Log Insight, we can see the logs relating to that VM in context. We can see the alerts that are being generated for that virtual machine, as well as the topology of where that sits in the environment and the type of stress that that's under. So it might be a case of perhaps that VM is sitting on a data store that's being flooded with IOPS by a noisy neighbor, or is running out of capacity, or has run out of capacity, and can no longer function. So we can drill down and find particular root cause of any issue for a particular VM. And if you're using vRealize operations today, chances are you're already using it to do this, but by offering vRealize operations as a service, you can give your customers that ability so that they can do their own troubleshooting. So and particularly in say a managed services environment, you can devolve those operations to your customers so that they can do it for themselves. So going back into the multi-cloud story, so again, something that's been spoken about a lot during VMworld and a lot during the last 12 months is VMware Cloud on AWS. So as many of you probably know by now, VMware Cloud on AWS it's just vSphere in AWS data centers. So you can monitor it exactly like you would any vSphere environment. And so when you're using vRealize operations, if your customer has a VMware Cloud on AWS SDDC, you can just point the vRealize operations instance at that vCenter server, and it will begin collecting data about that, and then they can use that for their troubleshooting purposes. Same thing goes for native Amazon Web Services. So we've got a management pack that integrates with native AWS. So if you're running workloads in EC2, maybe you've got some EBS volumes, RDS databases, you can monitor all the metrics and associated data points with those in a familiar vRealize operations-based dashboard. So we'll see dashboards, heat maps, troubleshooting, alerts, reports, etc. All the same vRealize operations constructs that you're familiar with, but for your you or your customers' native AWS resources. Again, for Pivotal Cloud Foundry, so if your customers are running container workloads in Pivotal, then you could see some information about availability zone mappings, metrics about what's going on inside those container workloads, memory, CPU utilization, storage, networking, and make some decisions based on that. So if you find that maybe you've got some application servers that are running as container workloads and they're running at 100% utilization, and you need to scale that out, then vRealize Operations can provide you with that information inside a PaaS service like Pivotal Cloud Foundry. So now, as service providers, you're going to be or cloud providers, I should say, you're going to be used to working at scale. So you might be dealing with tens, hundreds, possibly even thousands of ESXi hosts in your environment. If you're operating, say, a vCloud Director-based environment, or even if you're not, even if you're just offering private hosted cloud, maybe you've got tens or hundreds of vCenters and hundreds or thousands of hosts that are backing those. So you're going to be used to working at scale, and when we're working at scale, we need a centralized point of management from which we can manage all of our infrastructure. And so vRealize Operations is no different. So if you wanted to offer vRealize Operations as a service to your customers, and you didn't have a tool from which you can centrally manage this, then you're going to be running through install wizards, you're going to be typing in configuration information and doing everything manually, and it's probably going to be unsustainable, the amount of effort that you'll have to expend. So a short while back, late last year, I believe, we released a product called vRealize Suite Lifecycle Manager. And so Lifecycle Manager can deploy and lifecycle manage all of the vRealize products from a single point. And so through Lifecycle Manager, you can then go and deploy an instance of vRealize Operations. And the way in which that works is there's a bit of a wizard. You click through that wizard and enter all of the configuration parameters, usernames, passwords, IP addresses, the usual stuff. And then it'll go off and do that deployment for you automatically using the vRealize Operations API. But before you go off and deploy that, you're given the opportunity to save that configuration as a JSON snippet, which you can then use as basically a cookie cutter to stamp out more instances of vRealize Operations for your customers. So this makes it pretty easy. And then to take it one step further, vRealize Suite Lifecycle Manager also has its own API. So you're able to drive the deployment of instances of vRealize Operations through that API. So you might take that JSON snippet and you might script up or write some code that auto-populates, if you're onboarding a couple of new customers, that auto-populates that JSON for multiple customers, and then use the API to stamp out new environments for those customers. So it makes things really easy. So a few slides on how we go about doing this. So as I mentioned before, using Lifecycle Manager, we can install all of the vRealize products. There's a short wizard that you enter some data into and go off and deploy those instances. So the deployment of those is compliant with the VVD. So vRealize Operations is mentioned in VMware's VVD for vSphere-based private clouds. And you can, using your My VMware account, which you will plug into Lifecycle Manager, you can then select which version of vRealize Operations that you want to go and deploy, and then also the size of that installation. So once you've gone off and you've deployed your instance, then what you can do is say, okay, well, this is going to be my baseline configuration. I know that this works. I know that this is stable. And then Lifecycle Manager can then monitor all deployed instances against a defined baseline. And if there is any drift from that baseline, it can be remediated back to a known working state. There's some health and monitoring-based functionality baked into Lifecycle Manager as well. So integrating with vRealize Operations self-health based features, it can tell you if there are any problems with any of those vRealize Operations instances that you've deployed, and you'll get a dashboard-like view for doing that. Now this is the good bit. So if you have any customers that they choose to deploy an instance of vRealize Operations and they're operating in a multi-cloud environment, they might have some workloads, as I mentioned, on premises in your cloud, and maybe one of the hyperscalers in VMware Cloud and AWS. So in order to monitor those, we've got, if you're going beyond vSphere, we've got, I think hundreds of management packs through which you can extend the functionality of vRealize Operations. And you can deploy these management packs for your customers through Lifecycle Manager in a couple of clicks. So you don't have to log in to Lifecycle Manager. You don't have to download it from My VMware and then go and upload the file and then activate the file and then, and click through, 10 screens or so. It's a couple of clicks and you can push that out for your customers. So the same goes for upgrades. So when it comes time to lifecycle management, a massive pain point for cloud providers is upgrades and patching. So, if you've got, in a vSphere environment, if you've got hundreds of hosts that you need to patch, it's, you don't do them one by one, you automate it. So again, if you're deploying vRealize Operations for your customers, let's say if you've got 100 private to cloud customers and you deploy 100 instances of vRealize Operations, you don't want to click through and go and patch every single one. You can automate this using Lifecycle Manager, and it's like literally a one-click upgrade or one-click for a patch or an upgrade. So then the last thing that I want to talk about is more of in an operational context. So if you choose to, or if your customers choose to purchase a vRealize Operations instance from you, you've got some decisions to make on how that's going to be managed and where that line of demarcation will sit between the division of responsibilities. So typically, all of those infrastructure-based responsibilities, it's likely your customers will be looking to you to manage that. So things like backup and restore, upgrades, patching, maybe even some basic administration and security. But then all of the environment-specific operations, things like user management, creating custom dashboards, supermetrics, extending it out, perhaps putting in some Python-based actions. I mean, unless you're providing a fully managed service for your customer, it's probable that you won't know everything about their business, and you may not even know like what other clouds that they're using as well. So that division of responsibility, or shared responsibility, to use the Amazon terminology, is very important to think about when you're offering this type of service to your customers. So just food for thought when you go through your productization process. You need to consider all those operational factors as well, and how you'll manage that and offer that to your customers. So I'm going to hand it back to Anand now, and he's going to talk about some of the features and services you can offer with vRealize Operations without actually giving your customers access to vRealize Operations. So off to you, mate.
Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
So now let us talk about the third bucket here, that is offering a VROps features as a service to your customers. And this includes offering alerts as a service, reports as a service, and also predictive DRS as a service. Anybody here that is offering any of these as services to your customers? Awesome. And this is directly coming from the surveys that we have done with our customers. And that is why we want to share this information with you so that you can be productive as well and grow your business. So let's look at what we can do with alerts as a service. As you all know, alerts are a combination of symptoms and recommendations that are used to identify and resolve problems in your tenants' environments. And you can define compliance standards alerts, and you can also notify your customers if certain objects are out of compliance in their data centers. For example, let's say that you don't want your tenants, the requirement is that SSH should not be running on ESXi host. And if VROps determines that SSH secure shell is running in the environment, you can flag that as a red alert and notify your tenants. Right, so that is a good example. And also let us say that your tenants would want certain release or certain version of the software to be running in their environment. You can set up policies for doing that. And if for some reason VROps detects that it is out of compliance, the versioning is out of compliance, you can notify your tenants that the environment is out of compliance. Another example could be that your tenants are running an accounting software. This is coming directly from the polling that we did. And their end customers were kind of having problems with performance. And it was determined that it was because of CPU utilization. And VROps was able to detect that based on the policies that were set. And they were quickly able to notify their customers, okay, this is the problem. The good thing about VROps is it's okay to find out what the problem is, but also at the same time, you should be willing to, or you should be showing what the recommendations are so that they could fix the problem. That's what VROps does. It's just not to identify what the problem is, it is also to make sure that there are recommendations to go about how to fix those problems. The second bucket, as I pointed out, is reports as a service. How many of you here reports? Anybody? Perfect. So again, as with alerts, you could set up, VROps comes with out-of-the-box predefined alert templates that you could use and offer these reports as a service to your tenants. Good example is, again, compliance-based reporting. As with alerts, you could still offer reports as a service to your customers. And the third bucket that you see here is predictive distributed resource scheduling, where you could basically intelligently place workloads based on certain policies that you can define. This is, again, predictive. The version of DRS that you have with vSphere, it is reactive. Whereas with VROps integration, I think it was integrated with 6.4, you could offer predictive DRS as a service to your customers. Very important, right? This is especially good for mission-critical workloads, and you can use it with VCD and also with vSphere-based clouds. Very important. This is for offering or making sure that your workloads are placed intelligently so that performance is not affected and your tenants get perfect. Their applications are running absolutely fantastic with the required SLAs in terms of performance. Anybody here offering predictive DRS as a service? Maybe this is something that you could take back with you. Again, there are alerts that you can set up in terms of monitoring the operating system processes and also the metrics. It could be based on the workloads could be running on Windows or Linux, and it could work on any of the clouds. So there are alerts that you can define that basically go into the operating system processes, and you can define policies so that the appropriate metrics are taken out, and you could basically send that as a report or an alert to your tenants. Anybody here using OS metrics, offering them as a service, alerts, reports? Perfect. Thank you. The fourth bucket that I talked about earlier is to basically augment your application practice. How many of you are offering SAP HANA as a service? Anybody here? Database as a service? Perfect. So VROps could basically integrate into any of these environments. We have management packs that you could use to integrate VROps into, for example, let's say that your tenants would like to know how their web servers are performing. It could be, Apache Tomcat or Microsoft IaaS. VROps could integrate into these environments and figure out, you could basically find out how those environments are performing. Similarly with databases, we have integrations with a huge list of databases. It could be a relational database or hyperscale database. And we have management packs for all of these databases. And also for Active Directory, metrics and reporting, VROps could be a perfect solution to monitor such environments. A great solution. And again, the thing is, it's not dedicated only to a private cloud environment. It could span across multiple clouds. Okay. Any questions on this? Well, just to summarize, what we talked about today as part of this presentation, we started off by knowing what BCPP is. Then we delved into the market trends. Then we found out that the future is going to be a multi-cloud environment. And we defined the solution as VROps and how VROps could be offered as a service. We defined those 4 buckets, namely VROps single instance to multiple tenants, VROps across multiple clouds, augmenting your practice with VROps, and also the 4th thing is offering VROps as a service based on the features of VROps. So just to reiterate, just to recap, we have created a small video for you. I hope you will certainly enjoy it. Oops. Yep. Thank you.
This is Jake. Jake's company is a leading cloud provider. Jake recently revolutionized the company's data center management with VMware's vRealize operations, attaining a single pane view into the performance, capacity, configuration, and management of their infrastructure. That made the operations team happy and the bosses happy. Jake was a hero. Now his bosses believe he can take the company's services to the next level. Jake, how can we give our customers the ability to proactively plan and monitor their own cloud environments? Can we give them access to what we see, the health, risk, and efficiency of their infrastructure? Jake says, actually, yes. We could offer vRealize operations as a subscription-based service. If we extend tiered access to our customers, they could monitor and manage their entire infrastructure by selecting out-of-the-box reports and alerts, application and database monitoring and analysis, and the management and alerts of workloads across multiple cloud environments. By offering these upgraded services, their customers gained comprehensive visibility into the performance, capacity, and health of their entire stack. Customers are happy. Jake's bosses are happy. The data center is doing well and is generating new revenue streams for the company. Jake is a superhero. Be like Jake. Talk to your VMware rep today about taking your data center to the next level.
So how many of you here want to be like Jake? I hope you enjoyed this video. Any questions and answers for Dan? Or maybe,
So is anybody interested in providing vRealize operations as a service to your customers? And so maybe show of hands for the multi-tenant based solution and single tenant. Yep. Private cloud. Yep. Cool. Is there? Yep. Sure.
How does the licensing work for like providing vOps as a service?
So basically, are you a cloud provider?
Yes.
So we don't restrict it. So if you have subscribed to our pricing and packaging, do you know what bundle you're currently running?
Advanced management, for example.
I think it is an 8 or 9 point bundle, right?
I'm sorry?
It is the 8 or 9 point bundle?
The VCD is 9.1.
Yeah, so you're using, no, not the VCD version, the bundle that you have subscribed to from VMware. So let's say that you're running a 9 point bundle, right? It includes VRApps, advanced, and it includes other components of the VMware stack. So basically, you're going to pay 9 points per VM usage, right, based on the VRAM. So what you do with your tenants, we don't control that. We don't control that at all. So it is up to you how you want to basically package and offer that as a service to your tenants.
And you can, so if you provide vRealize operations through the multi-tenant, the management pack and the tenant app, so you can turn that on and off for any given customer. So if you've got, let's say, a tenant instance of vRealize operations, and that's pointed at all of your resource vCenter servers, then that will be able to see all of those, it'll be able to see all of the workloads running on those vCenter servers. But through the tenant app, you can decide which tenants will have access to those. And then in your reporting back to VMware, you'll be able to show which workloads are being actively monitored with vRealize operations. So it doesn't mean, what it doesn't mean is that you would get billed for the entire infrastructure. You would only pay for the VMs in which you're monitoring.
Okay. Any more questions? So point being, again, we don't restrict how you basically package and sell it to your customers. So any more questions?
No, everyone got it?
Well, as we close out, I would like to reiterate that the cloud is a great place to be, and the future is going to be a multi-cloud environment. It provides you with tremendous opportunities to service your tenants as well as to grow your business. And VMware is a trusted partner, in this beautiful, wonderful journey. And thank you very much for your time today, and hope we see you all next year. Most importantly, have a safe trip back home. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.